Hi guys, welcome back to Blackgirlthought TV. As you can tell by now, this is going to be just audio, and this is what I'm going to call Blackgirlthought Radio, which will be something that I do normally on my channel now, and I'm super hype about it. And I decided to do this. It's going to be a podcast sort of thing. I decided to do this because I wanted to switch it up. I wanted to make sure that I have a way to create visually, but also have a way to create where it's just audio, and it's a bit easier for me to continuously get content to you guys. But also some things are actually much easier kind of not having to do a visual sort of thing for. So I'm super excited. So you guys can just sit back, relax, and listen to me rant when you're in your car, when you're on your way to work or school. And that's nice. I'm just going to pop off, and it's going to be a great time. Just a few housekeeping things. I actually have opened up an online store, and I'm going to put the links in the description below. And if you guys want to support me and buy one of my shirts or my coffee mugs or anything like that, I would be like super grateful. Okay. Buy a damn product. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm actually really excited about this podcast today because I'm going to be diving into something that I've been wanting to make a video on for a while, and I am super excited. I mean, as always, I'm really just eager to get you guys' opinion on these things, and I'm eager to kind of start a dialogue and kind of bring up things that aren't often talked about. I'm going to be talking about parenting, and in particular when your parents kind of do things that can really come off as I don't want to say abusive, but it could be abusive from time to time. So I was just watching this show called This Is Us. If you want to watch a show that's going to fucking open you up and have you crying for days, watch it. Okay, bitch, binge watch it, and you'll see I've been crying for days. Okay, I am now sleeping with my mother's ashes because the show done goddamn opened me up. Okay, so, and in the show, there is a little girl named Kate, and her mother, when she was younger, Kate is overweight, and she kind of grew up to be overweight. And her mother kind of mentioned weight when she was younger. Like she told her father to mention her weight kind of in a way of, okay, sweetie, we're going to have an apple instead of kind of eating more ice cream or eating more cookies. And I think that this is something that happens often when our parents kind of mention things like weight or our parents, and it can be hard because it's kind of like difficult for us to kind of swallow it and take it. And I just really kind of wanted to get into the intention of when a parent does that. And it's something that I learned in therapy, but it's also something that I learned kind of a little bit after my mother died, and kind of really evaluating my relationship with her and evaluating some of the things that she did when I was younger that could kind of appear as hurtful or her just kind of being set in her ways or being mean. But when it really boils down to it, it's her wanting the best for me. And oftentimes we have to find a way to kind of get our point across when we want the best for someone, kind of learning how to say it properly or learning kind of what exactly to do or say that'll really get the message to the person without kind of being discouraging or mean or something like that. And so this is kind of for anyone who grew up with parents kind of being, I guess, critical of them. So for example, I know for girls in particular, your mother can kind of talk about your hair or constantly criticize your hair. Or I know when I was natural, my mom, she just wasn't used to it. And then kind of when it grew out and I wore it like in a twist out, she was just like, oh, I love it. Like, oh my God, like I want my hair like yours. And I think in the beginning it was hard for her because it's just like kind of Black women who wear their hair like that. Kind of first of all, you don't see many Black women like that. So I think she didn't want me to be ostracized because my hair was different, but also because of the stereotypes and because of the notions that are behind kinky hair. Kind of it's nappy and it looks horrible and it's not professional and things like that. And I think my mom just wanted the world to see me in a way that would cause less discrimination, because I'm already going to be discriminated against because of my skin color and because of where I come from. But I think she wanted to make it to where as though I would experience that sort of discrimination less. And in the moment I couldn't see that, obviously, and it took me a while to kind of get it, but I did get it after a while. So I'm just going to kind of tell you guys a few stories that can kind of really get my point across, and hopefully this makes sense. And by the end, you guys can comment and kind of tell me a little bit about your relationship with your mom and If this is something that you struggle with, kind of your mother being critical, or someone that's a family member, or someone who's kind of a guardian figure being critical of you, and it just makes you feel uncomfortable sometimes, or it could feel toxic. There are times where you really need to cut those people off. Like, as you get older, you don't have to be involved with your mother. You really don't, like, or your father, or anyone in your life who's toxic for that matter. Like, you don't have to. I think the best thing about growing up is when you realize that family low-key is optional. A lot of people don't feel that way, but family really is optional. No matter how close you grew up or anything like that, if they are toxic and they make you feel like crap and discouraged and things like that, I personally say they're optional. And for me, a lot of people ask me why I'm so kind of confident and why I can do all the things that I do. And it's really because I don't have anyone in my life that's toxic and or anyone in my life that really kind of is discouraging or question the decisions I make or tell me I'm not good enough. I don't play that. I have no time for it. I literally will cut you out of my life completely. And that's just because I'm so protective of my space and my energy, and I love myself that much to kind of really be completely dismissive of anything that is toxic in that way. And I encourage the same thing for you guys. Like, I have friends whose parents are toxic, and I'm just like, hey, it's not healthy, and you don't have to kind of put up with it, especially when you're older. I'm turning 25 this year, and it's something that you really learn as you kind of grow older, that you don't have to be involved. And oftentimes when you look at your family, it's like, yo, we're really only cool because we're family, but as a person, I wouldn't really hang with you, or I'd like as a person, I mean, you're not the best person. So you get to kind of distance yourself from family and see them for people as opposed to them just as your siblings. See them as other humans who have their own issues and things like that. So when I was younger, I'm going to tell you guys about 2 stories. When I was younger, I remember going outside in my nightgown, and I remember getting a beating for that. And I never really understood it. And it was something that like still plays in my mind. It was this nightgown that had a gumball machine on it, and I was just I was one of those little girls. So I grew up with all brothers. I have 5 brothers, and I was the only girl and the youngest, so I was completely protected and fucking tortured and fighting my brothers all the time. And I remember going outside in a nightgown, and there was this boy outside that I liked, and my mother beat me for going outside in my nightgown, and it was because she didn't want me to go outside in my night clothes, because it's just like, that's not presentable. Like, that's not how you present yourself to the outside world. And I didn't understand why it was such a big deal, right? So that's one thing that happened. I remember when, as I grew up, my mother she was verbally abusive, completely verbally abusive, but she had her own things going on. So she was mentally ill. She was schizophrenic and things like that. But she was completely verbally abusive to me growing up. And that verbal abuse was really kind of focused toward my appearance. And in a way of growing up with all boys and all brothers, it's like, it's really kind of a space for, like, I remember literally looking for my Nikes underneath my bed because I'm just like, I want to go play with the boys. Like, I will put like Huggies juice cans in the back of my bike to make it sound like a motorcycle like the boys, and I wanted to ride with the boys, and I didn't want to wear skirts. And so like the woman that I am today, kind of really feminine, hyper feminine, I would call it, kind of really girly, is very different than the kind of girl that everyone would assume I would become, and the woman I would become. And I became that way because I kind of surrendered to my mother. So she would always kind of say, like, you need to like care more about how you look. Like, you need to match your clothes. Like, you need to care. And I remember going to school and just not caring what I looked like. Like, I just did not care. And it wasn't until I realized I was pretty. Like, it was actually like a revelation where I realized I was pretty and other people saw me as pretty. And I started to see myself as appealing and like beautiful. And I was just like, oh shit. And I kind of really just like gave into it after a while. But I remember my mom kind of being really like abusive, kind of really like, you need to dress better. Like, you look a mess. Like, no one's gonna love you. Like, she literally would tell me, no one's gonna love you. Like no man's gonna want you if you don't take care of yourself, if you're not appealing, if you're not this, right? And I kind of, now I really want to make it a point to say that yes, your parents fucked us up. Like, I'm sorry, parents just fuck you up. That's just period, point blank. However, there's a point in which you stop blaming them and you stop making excuses and you stop kind of using them as your excuse not to get the help that you need or to be better. So if you're kind of still using your parents as an excuse, or your childhood or your circumstances, like, this is why I can't do that because I was abused, and this is why I can't do that, like, I understand completely. Go to fucking therapy, get the help that you need, and move on and be a bad bitch, okay? And if you're a man listening to this and you identify, or if you're gender non-conforming and I don't give a shit, okay? Go get help and then be a bad bitch and then be like, that's nice. I've been through this and I'm Gucci. I'm still out here thriving and rocking. Okay. I am not at all in any way for people who make excuses, because I have been through hell on earth, even though hell isn't a real place. I have been through fictitious hell on earth. And I'm still out here doing my thing, like, fear or not. Like, it's like, completely. So I'm not for making excuses. I'm really just, I want to help us understand where these things could stem from, but also really kind of better understand our parents, especially for people who want children. I have no interest in children, but for people who want children, I think that these are important things to really consider and really think about when you think about raising your children and wanting the best for them. So I remember my mom kind of really abusing me and even beating from me for going outside, kind of not looking presentable. And I remember when I wore my first skirt, and she would take me to, so my mother was a recovering drug addict and she went to Narcotics Anonymous. So I remember going to the meetings with her, and she was always so well dressed. Like, everyone looked up to her for the way she was kind of well dressed. And she was the woman who walked in the room and she just fucking stopped the room and everybody kind of stood still, like, she's fucking gorgeous. And like, that was my mother. And I remember kind of wearing the skirt and starting to be really girly. And I remember people coming up to me saying like, oh my God, like, oh my God, like, and I remember her saying, this is how you cross your legs and this is how you hold your purse. And she was just really kind of like vetting me to be this really feminine girl. And I remember wearing a skirt and heels and being on the treadmill in the gym with my brothers, and me falling off the treadmill, and I have this really big bruise on my arm because I fell off the treadmill in the heels and in the skirt. And it's just like, that was a moment where I realized that, like, my mother was training me to not be this girl who hung with her brothers and kind of do these really sort of boyish things. And she wanted me to be more feminine. And I really didn't get it until now. And this is the point of today's podcast. I want us to understand where our parents are coming from. So I want to make it clear that my mother's intention was, she really wanted me to have as many tools that I needed to succeed. Like, that was her intention, right? So like, she was abusive as hell, verbally abusive, definitely. And when it boiled down to it, it was because she didn't know, like, she was abused as well. So hurt people, abuse people. Like, that's just how it works. She didn't know how to kind of really properly articulate that until I was older, and until she saw that, like, I kind of found my way and I was in college. Like, my mother died when I was 21 and I was in college. So like, she kind of really she really understood that I would find a way to kind of be me and do my own thing, and I'd still kind of succeed and be successful. So she was kind of able to let go a little bit. But I understand her intentions of, I want you to have what you need to succeed. And kind of, even in a feminist perspective, if we go back into kind of previous generations, there was a point in which a woman's appearance and kind of the other things about her, like kind of if she was a virgin or not, and things like, or if she was cooking and cleaning, these things were really the determinant factor of what type of life she was going to live. So she had to make herself appealing to kind of a potential husband, because it was just like, hey, this is how you're going to survive. Like, you need his money. Like, you need, like, to leave your parents' house and go live with your husband. Like, back in the day, that was a thing. And there are some people who still have these ideas of, you need to be this sort of person so that we can ensure your future. And in a way, that's what my mom was doing. So if you are kind of bigger, and if you're fat, and if you're overweight, and your mother or father have done things to kind of talk about your weight or wanting you to lose the weight and things like that, oftentimes they're really coming from a place of, we know for a fact that there's discrimination in the world. So my mom knew that as a Black woman, I would already have people kind of against me, and I would already have discrimination and sexism that I would have to fight. And I would have these issues coming from the ghetto. She knew that I would have a hard time already, she didn't want to add my appearance and people being put off by my appearance to the list, right? So that's where she was coming from. She wanted me to go out into the world like, hey, I have all these things against me and I'm a Black woman from the ghetto, but hey, I present myself well. And that if like before you kind of judge me based on the fact that I'm Black and based on where I come from, hopefully you can see me and you can say, okay, like at least she's well put together, at least she's ladylike, at least she's womanly. And it's something that I kind of really had to understand about my mother and understand about kind of her mother and her growing up and where she comes from, but also understanding women, like kind of the history of women and the type of things that we often kind of back in the day had to do before we became empowered and so independent and things like that. And there are actually still ideas that exist like that. Like, oh my gosh, she has sex with a lot of men, no one's going to want her, which is not fucking true. Like, anyway, have all the fucking sex you want in a safe manner, okay, in a safe and consensual manner. Do what the hell you want. But my mother, so with my mother, the thing was kind of making sure that I was kind of physically okay. And that even went into when I was in college and I gained weight my freshman year because obviously niggas was eating hella Twizzlers, the fuck. So I came home and my mom was just like, ew. Like she would like poke my stomach and she'd be like, ew, like, ugh. Like she was disgusted. And I said to her, I'm just like, as you grow up and you become emotionally healthy, you can help those around you become emotionally healthy. So I remember saying to my mom, I'm like, Mom, you don't have to point out my weight in that way. Like, I know I've gained weight. I know, like, it's on my body. I know that I'm falling out of my jeans. Like, I get it completely, but you don't have to say it in that way. And I remember literally her response to me was so kind of like kind. And she was just like, okay, how do you want me to say it? And that was such a healthy moment for us. And that's oftentimes how we can respond in relationships. Like, hey, you can say that better. Like, you can be kinder. Like, you can be nicer about that thing. And I just told her, like, you can say something that's not as bad as ill or something that doesn't make you think that I'm just this disgusting fat pig. And mind you, I hadn't gained that much weight, but there was a noticeable difference because I've always been pretty like tall and like kind of like average, like thin. And then I remember the next summer I came home and I've never been like that in shape in my life. I did the Insanity program and I lost tons of weight, and I had to really understand that my mom was kind of like, she wanted me to have the best possible life, and she understood, even if she couldn't properly articulate it because she didn't have enough education or because she didn't think so deeply inside of it. What was really coming out was she knew that everything was already stacked against me, and kind of she knew that being fat or being bigger or being kind of masculine and a tomboy and like all those things would kind of be added to the list of why people would discriminate against me and not give me opportunity. And I get that it's like, we don't want to conform or adhere to these sort of rules. But there's a point in which like your parents understand that you have to play the game. So when you go to a job interview, you look a certain way, you present yourself in a certain way. And it's that same sort of logic of like, I want you to have the best chance, right? So your parents kind of look at, you're living your entire life like you're going to a job interview, like I want you to have the best chance. And it's our job to kind of find this space between being comfortable kind of in our skin and being comfortable with the fact that there's discrimination, there's sexism, and there's racism. People are going to judge us based on these things that like we don't control, like the things that we can't control, like our skin color and where we come from. But the things we can control is like our weight and how we kind of like the effort we put into our physical appearance and making sure that we are presenting our best self. And I know a lot of people resist to those sorts of things. Like, there are a lot of people who are kind of just like, I shouldn't have to look a certain way. And I get it. I completely get it. However, there are actual kind of factors that go into people judging us based on our appearance and the treatment that we get based on our appearance. So I just kind of wanted to talk about our parents and where they're coming from when they say some of the things they say, and when they they oftentimes, especially if they're from an older generation, they oftentimes don't know how to properly articulate or get across what they're trying to actually say. Like, I want the best possible life for you. And if you're a Black woman, like, people are already going to be against you. But if you kind of put a little bit of effort and look pretty and maybe adhere to the body standard, like, maybe things would be a bit easier for you. And I want them to be as easy as possible. So that's why parents tell you to get an education, because that'll make it much easier for you to get a job. And like, that's where they're coming from. And for people who want children or people who have children, because some of you in my audience, you're in your 30s and you may have children, and it's just like, find a way to properly kind of tell your children what you're trying to get across, you know? And that could help them kind of understand how important it is for these kind of certain things to put some effort into, like how you look and things like that. So that is a part of my story. And I think this was my first time telling you guys my mother was abusive. And these are things that I specifically remember. And I gave into her eventually. I remember being really girly, and I actually really enjoyed it. Like, I loved kind of feeling good in my clothes. And that happened when I think I was in middle school, because my brothers and I kind of like were separate. Like, we went to school and we didn't spend as much time together because we were kind of in school and they got new friends and I couldn't hang out with them as much, and they were older than me. So it was just like I was the only girl, and there was a point in which the isolation became real as fuck. Like, okay, so I'm just like, damn, I'm really the only girl. So I kind of really came into my own as a girl and being feminine and really feeling beautiful and pretty. And yeah, so yeah, I felt like that was deep. I know that some of you, your parents in weight, and that's a really big thing, or the way you're not ladylike enough, or your mom tries to force you, especially if you're a woman and your relationship with your mom is try to force you to be better in certain ways. And if it's toxic for you, I really would say kind of cut down like a lot of the time in which you kind of spend in these toxic relationships, and really kind of understand where they're coming from. And I think before you can do that, you have to forgive them for what they've done. So I forgive my mom completely, and I'm actually really grateful, because now I'm girly as fuck and I love being dressed up and dolled up, and I love it. It's like one of my biggest things, like taking photographs and putting together outfits and looking at shoes. It's a fucking hobby of mine. Like, I love it. But there was a process getting here. I didn't just come out of my mom's coochie thinking like, oh my God, yes, bitch, put me in some pumps. Like, it wasn't like that. So yeah, I hope that this was helpful in some sort of way. And I would love to hear what you guys think about this. I would love to kind of get like some sort of dialogue and kind of start a discourse on parenting and kind of weight and your mother kind of wanting you to adhere to certain ideas of womanhood, and how that can be particularly rough when you want to rebel. And I can't imagine what it's like for kind of lesbians who are butch and their mothers being really feminine and having to deal with that sort of, or women who are what we consider traditionally masculine or tomboys. Like, I can't imagine that. Well, I've been through that, but kind of growing up into your womanhood life and you still being that way, and your mother kind of dealing and accepting that. The earlier generation, a lot of the way they lived their life was really fear-based. So they did a lot of things based on fear. Like, I'm going to be this way so the world can respond to me in this particular way. And because I'm scared, I won't. And it's just like, I feel like it's just a lot of fear. And today we're much more fucking fearless, and I love it, even though there are some ways in which we still conform. So yeah, I hope that this was helpful. And I would love to hear what you guys have to say, your relationship with your mother and your parents and things like that. Yeah, first podcast, we're just jumping right into it, huh? Let's get deep. Yeah, if you guys have questions, then email, comments, and I can address them. And yeah, I love you guys. Go to my freaking website and buy something, because you goddamn love me. And this is Blackgirlthought Radio. Yeah, that's what this is. All right. I love you guys. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.